always look at it as I'm an antique dealer. Oh, yeah, but I also, that, you know, for me, like, I get into the general antique space jokes.
In September 2024, Robbie Wolf wrote a goodbye to his best friend. He wrote about a fishing boat, about 50 years of trips nobody filmed, about a smile he was never going to see again. That same night, tens of thousands of posts called him a fraud, a thief, the man who destroyed American pickers. They were writing about the wrong person, and nobody had thought to check. Who was Robbie Wolf before any camera found him? And why was everyone so ready to believe the worst? Join us as we find out what really happened to Robbie Wolf from American Pickers. Here is what you think you know. Frank Fritz did not just leave American Pickers, he was pushed out, and he said so publicly. He had been there since day one. He and Mike spent 10 years driving across America in a cargo van, knocking on strangers' doors, digging motorcycles out of barns. For a large part of the audience, Frank was the show, not Mike. In 2020, Frank took time off for back surgery. When production resumed in early 2021, he was not there. By July of that year, Mike confirmed on Instagram that Frank would not be coming back. The statement was warm and carefully worded. Frank's response was not. Frank gave an interview to The Sun in which he said Mike had never called during his entire recovery, not once. He said he found out he was off the show the same way the public did, through the internet. There was no conversation, no meeting, no phone call. Then he went further. He told reporters the show had always been set up to favor Mike, that he had not spoken to him in 2 years, and that the plan all along had been to remove him and slide his brother in as a replacement. Fan forums caught fire. Comment sections on every American Pickers post became a war zone. Robbie, who had just been confirmed as a full-time cast member, walked straight into it. The timing looked exactly as suspicious as Frank said it was. The audience felt robbed, and Robbie was standing in the frame. The comments were brutal. People said he killed the show's energy. One viewer posted directly to the production, begging them not to pair Robbie with Jersey John. Another said, flat out, they would never watch again. It followed every new episode, every week, for months. In July 2022, Frank suffered a major stroke at his home in Iowa. He was 58 years old. He spent his final 2 years in a wheelchair, unable to speak. He died on September 30th, 2024. He was 59. The argument about his replacement had been running for 3 years before he was buried. Frank had spoken publicly about his health before the stroke hit. During his time away from the show, he discussed back surgery, Crohn's disease, and significant weight loss. By the time he gave interviews criticizing Mike, he had already been through 2 years of serious physical difficulty. The audience that rallied behind him knew parts of that story. Most did not know all of it. The numbers confirmed the damage. The show launched in January 2010 to 3.1 million viewers, the biggest History Channel debut since Ice Road Truckers in 2007. By season 25, it was pulling 723,000 on a good night, a fraction of what it had been at its peak. At its peak in season 3, the show was drawing over 4 million viewers per episode, renewed 13 consecutive times without a single season break. The show had been credited with creating an entire secondary market. Barn sales, estate auctions, and flea markets across the Midwest reported direct increases in foot traffic tied to the show's popularity. It had turned picking from a niche hobby into a television category. When the numbers started falling, that entire world started falling with them. Robbie had appeared in over 76 episodes before Frank ever left. The internet had written its verdict on a man it had never studied. The man the internet blamed for taking Frank's place had been Frank's closest friend since they were both 12 years old. So why did nobody report that? 35 years before the first episode, Frank Fritz was the godfather to Robbie's twin daughters. He was not a colleague he tolerated, but the man he trusted with his children. That is not a title handed to someone you barely know. That decision was made between two men with almost 4 decades between them, before either had ever been on television, before any producer had called either of their names, before the show existed in any form. They had been friends since 6th grade, same part of Iowa. They had traveled together to lacrosse events, Oktoberfest, and fishing trips, sitting in a boat for hours with nowhere to be and nothing to prove. Frank and Robbie had been going to flea markets together since before either of them had a television credit. Collecting wasn't a job that created friendship. The friendship existed first, and the collecting ran through it. The show put cameras near that friendship, but 40 years of it had already happened before any producer made a single call. When the stroke hit, Robbie went to see him. The crew went. Mike went regularly. The visits happened, the contact was maintained, but none of it was made public. In the weeks before Frank died, Robbie gave one interview. He said Frank was doing as well as could be expected, but that speaking on his behalf had become difficult because Frank could no longer speak for himself. That was the line he walked, speaking carefully for a man who could no longer speak at all. Then Frank died on September 30th, 2024. Mike posted a tribute that night. Danielle posted one. Robbie posted one. And his was different from both in every way that mattered. Mike wrote about the cargo van, the years on the road before the show existed, the shared history of picking through places nobody else cared about. Danielle wrote about Frank's humor, his love for his cat and his mother, and called him her road dog. Robbie did not mention the show. Not the ratings, the seasons, not a word of the 3 years of public noise surrounding both of them. He wrote about the fishing trips, about the boat, about a laugh he was going to miss, and a smile that was contagious. He wrote that Frank had been godfather to his twin girls. He ended by asking Frank to hold the boat steady until they could meet again. He did not explain himself, did not address 3 years of public hatred, did not acknowledge the controversy in any form, just wrote about his friend of 50 years, and left it at that. 3 people said goodbye publicly on the same night. Mike wrote about the show, Danielle wrote about the person, and Robbie wrote about a boat. Long before American Pickers existed, Robbie had already built and walked away from an entire life nobody ever reported on. So who exactly was the man the internet thought it knew? The life nobody reported on. In the 1980s, Robbie Wolf was performing in clubs in Los Angeles. He released 2 solo albums, wrote every song himself, collaborated with Lloyd Cole and Matthew Sweet, and contributed to projects connected to They Might Be Giants. It was a working music career built in one of the hardest cities in the world to sustain, not a side interest. He was performing on the same circuit as acts that went on to mainstream recognition. Lloyd Cole had charted in the UK. Matthew Sweet would release Girlfriend in 1991 to wide critical attention. Robbie was in that world, writing his own material, playing clubs. Then he stopped. He walked away, back to Iowa. Robbie was born on April 26, 1960, in Joliet, Illinois, 4 years before Mike, which made him the older brother, a fact dozens of media outlets consistently got wrong for years. He grew up in Bettendorf, Iowa, raised mostly by his mother after his parents divorced. By the time he was 8, he had turned that same instinct into a working business, collecting old bicycles, refurbishing them, and selling them for profit while he was still in 3rd grade. His grandfather William's influence was not just philosophical. Robbie has said in interviews that watching his grandfather work gave him the framework he still uses. Buy what others overlook. Restore what others discard. Sell when the value is clear. He learned that before he learned to drive. After Los Angeles, he married Melanie, had 5 children, and built a landscaping company from nothing, R.J. Wolfe and Sons, Davenport, Iowa. He ran it for 20 years through Iowa winters, built a real client base, then sold it in 2019 and moved on. 3 careers: music, landscaping, and picking. Each one built from zero and ended without a press release. There was also 1993. Robbie was 32 years old when he was arrested at a sports bar in Iowa, charged with assault causing bodily injury and interference with official acts after an altercation with an officer. He accepted a plea deal, received a suspended sentence, completed a year of probation and treatment, and had no further legal trouble in the 30-plus years that followed. It sat in court records in Iowa while the internet built its version of him from scratch. 2 months before Frank's exit was made public, Robbie purchased United Service Motors in Davenport for $200,000 and put another $25,000 into renovations, advertising signs, vintage motorcycles, gas pumps, classic cars, and a British phone booth. He also held a 6.11-acre land parcel and a family home bought in 2017 for $335,000, valued at $477,000 by 2025. His net worth sat between $500,000 and $1.8 million. Almost none of it came from television. By 2025, his son Risa was picking alongside him. Risa had become a father twice over, making Robbie a grandfather while he was still out buying things. His twin daughters, Frank's godchildren, were playing soccer in Iowa. Melanie's rule had not changed in 35 years. Fill up as many buildings as you want. Just do not bring it home. The man the internet turned on in 2021 was a grandfather. A former musician with 2 solo albums, a former landscaper who had run a company for 2 decades, a small business owner, and a picker since the age of 8. In over 76 episodes before his full-time confirmation, he had been billed as a guest. The show never formally introduced him any other way. In 12 months, the show lost Frank, nearly lost Mike, and Danielle told her followers it was over. So where was Robbie while the whole thing came apart? The year everything around him came apart. Frank died on September 30th, 2024, and 9 days later, season 26 premiered. The show kept going, and Robbie kept filming. In 2025, Mike closed the Nashville location of Antique Archaeology, a shop that had operated out of a former 1914 car factory for over a decade, a place fans had physically visited as a real-world extension of everything the show stood for. Mike posted that it had meant the world to him, that he was pursuing a slower pace of life back in Iowa. The fans who had been watching since 2010 understood what that meant. Then, on September 12, 2025, Mike and his girlfriend, Letitia Klein, were in Columbia, Tennessee, driving a vintage Porsche 356, when a 76-year-old man in an SUV pulled out from a side street with almost no warning. The Porsche had no airbags. Mike had fitted lap belts, and both were wearing them. Though on a car that old, traveling at that speed, it made very little difference. Mike suffered a broken nose, stitches, and heavy facial bruising. He was out of the hospital the next morning. Letitia's side absorbed most of the impact. Mike had swerved to try to miss the other car. She left the hospital 4 days later with a broken jaw in 3 places, broken ribs, a broken sternum, a collapsed lung, and bruising to her spine. She went through major surgery on September 22nd. The driver was later charged with vehicular assault and driving under the influence. Mike described it as life-changing, saying it had changed how he thought about time. Danielle posted, asking for prayers. Robbie said nothing. Weeks later, Danielle posted a video while talking about turning 50. She said American Pickers was done. She was at a crossroads. Without the show's financial support, things were going to be difficult. The video spread within hours. She had been with the show since the beginning. 16 years, over 300 episodes. A character as associated with the brand as the picking itself. When she said it was over, her followers took it seriously because she had never said anything like it before. A network representative told Parade there was no truth to it. Then, in the same statement, confirmed no new episodes were in production and there was no return date. Then the network confirmed it directly. Mike's new solo series, History's Greatest Picks with Mike Wolfe, was set for February 22nd, 2026 on the History Channel. 8 episodes, produced by Cineflix, focused on artifacts found by other collectors rather than Mike's own picks. The new project, the network said, was the reason American Pickers had no return date. A full season of American Pickers was filmed and unreleased. Season 28 was unconfirmed. The Nashville store was gone. The show had not returned from its first hiatus in 15 years. While all of it played out publicly, Robbie Wolf was in Davenport, Iowa, at his shop on Picks, the same as he had been every week before any of this started. Mike had a new show. Danielle had a plan. Robbie had not announced it at all because he had never needed to. What had he actually built while no one was watching? What really happened to Robbie Wolf? As of April 2026, American Pickers was airing every week. Season 27, new episodes running through March and into April. Episode 20 went out on April 5th. Robbie and Jersey John touring a 1950s New Jersey appliance showroom frozen in time. Episode 21, Grooves and Gasoline Dreams, was on the schedule for April 12th. The show the internet had declared finished was on the air, and Robbie was in it. United Service Motors was open, his son picking beside him. Not a television prop, but an actual working shop where serious buyers came for serious things. It had been that before the cameras, and it remained that after. The Bettendorf Americana Weekend, which he promoted in summer 2025, drew vendors from California, South Dakota, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, and Idaho. A serious regional event built around a name that had meant something in the collecting world long before it meant anything on television. The collectibles market was growing at 10 to 15% annually as of 2025. Vintage car restorations were returning 20 to 30%. Robbie's shop had been operating in the center of exactly those categories since March 2021, before Frank's exit was made public, before the backlash, before any of the noise. Mike's new show premiered on February 22nd, 2026. Both shows now run simultaneously on the same network. With Mike's attention split, Robbie and Jersey John were carrying more episodes independently. The man the internet said did not belong was now effectively holding the operational center of a show that had been on television for 16 years. Most reality shows on cable do not survive 3 seasons. American Pickers had aired over 300 episodes across 27 seasons, and Robbie was still in it. For context, American Pickers outlasted every comparable show in its category. American Restoration ended after 7 seasons. Pawn Stars is still running, but has shed its original cast. Storage Wars peaked and declined. American Pickers outlasted them all with its original format intact. Robbie made no public statement about any of it, and the silence was not new. It was the same thing he had done in Los Angeles, in Iowa, and across every chapter of his life before the show. He had left Los Angeles without a statement, sold a 20-year business without an announcement, and appeared in 76 episodes of a national television show before anyone bothered to call him a full-time cast member. When the internet spent 3 years calling him a fraud, he did not respond. When his best friend died, he wrote about a fishing boat and went back to work. When his brother launched a solo show on the same network, Robbie showed up for the next episode and picked a sign. The internet spent 3 years asking what Robbie took from Frank, what he stole from the show, what he owed the audience for showing up when he did, and never once asked what a man looks like when he has never needed anyone's permission to keep going. A grandfather in a shop in Davenport, teaching his son what his grandfather taught him. Someone who built a music career and walked away, built a landscaping business and walked away, and kept doing the same thing he had always done, while the world around him announced and collapsed and moved on. Someone who knew Frank Fritz for 50 years. Someone who was there at the end. Someone who went back to Iowa, sat in his shop, and never explained himself to anyone, because he never had to. It looked like a man who was fine. Do you think Robbie's silence protected him? Or did it cost him everything? With what you know now, do you think American Pickers fans ever owed him an apology? Or is that just how the internet works? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.